Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. Let's take a look at some morning temperatures this morning because, in fact, it's not hot everywhere. We had some actually record lows up there into the northeast. Look at all these areas highlighted in the blue. That is your record low temperatures this morning. And in fact, it continues into tomorrow morning with Scranton, Pennsylvania checking in at about 48 degrees as you wake up. So that's going to be feeling really nice up there. But mark your calendars because coming up in a couple of months, we do actually have another solar eclipse happening. So it's originating up here in Oregon, and this highlighted in the gray shaded area, that's going to be a total eclipse. Essentially, it's going to start around 9 o'clock sometime in and around the Oregon region, and then ending somewhere into Texas towards your San Antonio region for a total eclipse around the noon time. So if you live on the outskirts of this, like say in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you're about 80% totality. But nonetheless, it's one of those things you want to mark your calendars for because it is going to be something, to see and check out and kind of, be fascinated about for the middle of October. So let's take a look at the setup for the next 5 days because it's basically highlighted across the middle of the country. We've got that cooler pocket up north. So it's still going to remain on this chillier, if not comfortable side for a good part of the Northeast as well as into the mid-Atlantic regions. But you can see these white shaded areas. That is a colder pocket aloft. That's going to have the atmosphere kind of overturning itself as the heat will just basically dominate for the areas that have been remained hot or are going to continue to remain on the very hot side. So in the middle of the country is where really going to be all the action is going to take place. And that's in fact where it took place over the last 48 hours. You can see where they get the name, the Ring of Fire here. But if you lived in the Missouri region near St. Louis, we actually saw some very heavy rain, and we talked about this, and there's actually another setup happening this evening. So this region down here actually had up towards to in fact 7 inches of rainfall, and we could look at another convective complex of storms highlighted over the same general vicinity. So later on this afternoon, some of those storms actually could turn severe in and around the Kansas City region, towards the Springfield region, down here into St. Louis again, reaching near Paducah. That could be turning some severe storms, some damaging winds, some larger hail, but the main impact from these is going to be your very heavy rainfall. So where that cooler pocket aloft enters in off the west and the atmosphere kind of overturns itself, you have the higher probability to see the heaviest rainfall into eastern portions of Nevada, getting into Utah, up here into portions of Wyoming, and that swings across and really dives and elevates up here into northeastern portions of Missouri and southern Illinois, going back into portions of Kentucky region. This highlighted moderate risk for excessive rainfall could be looking at yet another 4 to 6 inches. Some isolated pockets of 6 to 8 inches of rain will definitely not be out of the question. So it's a back-to-back event of moderate risk for very heavy rainfall. But further south, it's just all about the heat, folks. And this heat is relentless down here. In fact, it's so dry now, we're getting numerous red flag warnings and critical fire danger issues out here because the vegetation is bone dry. The humidity levels are dropping down in the teens. The winds are picking up. That's what increases the high fire danger, and the excessive heat. Temps 105 plus with the heat index 110 plus highlighted around these areas in the magenta shaded areas. So this heat is the real deal, folks. You got to stay hydrated. You got to take plenty of breaks, because it doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon, especially for Texas. So, but we got storms to contend with if you live further north, and that's highlighted again over Thursday time frame, highlighted in the portions of eastern Colorado, back into western portions of Nebraska, getting into Kansas region again. And these will again be on the northern periphery of that ridge, and that's where the heavier rainfall is going to be for your day on Thursday. So you got the severe storms just a little bit further south. You got the heavier rainfall to the north. So that that pocket that was highlighted over Illinois and Missouri, now by your Thursday time frame, is really going to be highlighted over southern portions of Kentucky into central and eastern Tennessee there, and back into portions of Virginia, seeing that heavier pocket of rainfall. And that kind of the same general vicinity, we'll see these northwest flow events having these banding of rainfall, originate from the northwest and continue to dive, kind of east southeastward, kind of overturning the atmosphere. But things get a little bit more interesting on Thursday, because I think, or Saturday time frame, I think the atmosphere kind of elevates a little bit. So we got another fairly significant little low pressure down here into portions of the Dakotas, and further south, you're going to have a lot of lift associated with this atmosphere. And the atmosphere looks fairly significant with some of these parameters that are coming together. In fact, it's kind of rare. We haven't seen this in a while. The Storm Prediction Center does highlight a day 4 risk. They actually had this out yesterday of a day 5. So they did put out the numbers for July. And in fact, every day in the month of July, there was at least a slight risk somewhere in the United States. They had the most severe watches since 2003 timeframe. So it was a very active July, and it continues to be pretty active for the month of August. So the highlighted areas across Denver, into the Goodland region, back into Dodge City, into Wichita, back into Topeka, those are the favorite areas right now highlighted for Saturday timeframe for the most significant severe weather. And even though nothing's highlighted for Sunday, I think that actually might even be a bigger setup, because it really starts to get its act together once it gets over portions of Iowa, getting down here in Illinois again, and going back into Missouri. We could be looking at another high impact event with very heavy winds. We've got some pretty high Cape values across this region. Right now, they're checking in over 4,000. So there's definitely a lot of instability in the atmosphere. And right now, most model guidance actually has this hitting at like peak heating of the afternoon. So that's a little concerning around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, we could be looking at the atmosphere kind of explode. So yes, we'll be fine tuning this event as we get closer into the weekend. But yes, you can already see with these Cape values kind of forming as some of this, maybe a squall line type of activity that will really kind of get its act together across portions of Iowa, and then really diving down here into Illinois, pushing back into Missouri again. Remember the other day, we had a pretty significant event across Iowa. They peaked out about 93 miles an hour. And by the time it got into Illinois, they were hitting parameters of 80-mile-per-hour winds. Back then, they had dew points into the right around 80, if not almost 82, with the warm front backing up in that region. Right now, they're maxing out around 78, 77, 78. But yeah, as soon as some of the mesoscale guidance gets mixed into this atmosphere, they could easily likely be approaching 80 again, as those heat indices soar over 105, 110 degrees, and then that system will be coming across. So it looks like another fairly significant event. So definitely highlight these regions on Saturday and your Sunday time frame, because I'll be definitely fine-tuning this severe weather setup. So, but the breakdown for the next 5 days for the rain amounts, I mean, it's closed for rainfall in Texas, folks. That ridge of high pressure is serious this year. But here's your storm development and the very heavy rainfall, away from the ridge, and where the cooler pocket aloft is, where these vorticity systems are going to be coming in. Yes, we could be looking at heavier rainfalls kind of setting up shop, originating in the portions of Montana. Well, in fact, they're actually going to be on the much chillier side as well, getting down here into the Dakotas, and that swings across portions of Nebraska, getting through Iowa. And yes, there's your heavier rains are going to be taking place over the next 5 days along this boundary, as well as in the Northeast. Yes, you remain on the chillier side and the wetter side, as well as you continue to remain well above average on the precipitation front. So, but there's that front. I call it a front. It's a boundary, right? So the further south, you got that cooler pocket of those are temperatures on Monday, August the 7th. Obviously 70s are checking in really nice, very comfortable, cooler like summer like conditions, and they'll finally kind of share some of that cooler air with places further south into Oklahoma where they're getting those excessive heat warnings right now. Those will be replaced with widespread 80s coming up on your afternoon on Monday. So that's going to be a welcome relief back here in Arkansas. Gets into Tennessee again, but you can see further south, it definitely modifies, right? It puts on the brakes somewhere around the Red River region, maybe far extreme northern counties of North Texas. You might be looking at right at 100 degrees, but that's, I think, right where it basically stalls. I mean, it kind of washes it out more or less and then kind of backs up as a warm front. But that's depicted on the Climate Prediction Center. They've got those highlighted areas, you know, along this region. We talked about the negative NAO, the negative NAO. So it's got the teleconnections dragging some of that, you know, cooler air aloft and putting it on the surface map. And yeah, it's definitely chilly. We looked at record lows this morning across the Northeast. So predominantly on the northern periphery of the US, you're on the much cooler side, and definitely on the southern periphery of that, you're feeling the heat. So it's almost like you've got two different summers happening, right? So, I mean, that cold front only going to make it so far south. So here's the latest drought index. In fact, this actually came out on the 31st of July. And obviously where this ridge is and where they've seen almost next to nothing of rain, it's going to be, the drought is going to persist, if not get even, you know, stronger or, you know, develop and deepen further. So that's why they've got numerous red flag warnings, critical fire danger issues out these. So these areas into the Southwest and much of Texas is going to continue to remain on the drier side for August and possibly going into September month's time frame as well. While just to the north, you're going to get in all the action. So that's where these areas look at these above average rainfall, and much of the Northwest continues to remain on the drier side as well. So out areas out east into the mid-Atlantic and into the Ohio Valley, you're not really dealing with that big of a threat for drought conditions, or you're not really in a drought. So, you know, you're still getting a very, you know, heavy rainfall on a sporadic basis across these regions. So if you break down the precipitation for the next 15 days, it kind of looks like this on the ensemble guidance. So yes, we've got all that instability along the northern periphery. So this northern areas continue to remain on the cooler side. I don't really see any heat waves building across these regions. In fact, I continue to see on the wetter side. So across the Northeast, you into New England, you definitely remain on the cooler and wetter side. And the middle of the country, this is where the heavier rains. So the darker the blues, the higher probability. That's 3 to 4 inches above average on the ensemble front. So you're talking definitely some very heavy rain. You're probably talking flooding concerns across these regions. And then of course, further south in the brown shaded area, that's where you got the high in dryness and not much really rain to speak of. Slim or very little. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do stay hydrated out there. Definitely stay cool, and catch my next update where I protect you before and after storm.